Hello everyone. Hello everyone. You are someone, I am someone else, and today I just got out of work, so I'm a little tired. Plus, I need to fill up my car with gasoline. Gasoline meaning petrol, whatever, right? Anyway, that's besides the point. Despite the fact that I need to fill up my car with gasoline, despite the fact that I'm tired for work, there is somebody who will never come to work again. This is going to sound a little sad, but this is true. Also, I got flag pins. I get distracted so easily. I'm like ADHD, whatever. Anyway, that's besides the point, right? Someone died. I think it was 2 days ago, 3 days ago. Charlie Munger. Very famous investor. He's like a lifelong hero for me. I have his book. I have a few of his interviews on my phone I listen to. Charlie Munger is just an inspiration to many value investors. I'm not a value investor. I would never consider myself really an investor. I'm pretty bad at investing, all things considering. But I do like to study the investors that came before us, especially Benjamin Graham and there's some other investors. John Martin Keynes was actually a pretty good investor. He was not an investor, he was more a philosopher. But that being said, right, when it comes to investing, Charlie Munger is probably the titan. Like, he has compounded wealth way faster than anybody I can think of. He even has a higher return rate than Warren Buffett. Sure, he may have had less money because he started out with less money. He lost everything in his 30s. And that's how much compounding was. Like, you gotta realize, 10 years of compounding is double your returns. So you miss out on 10 years of investing, you actually lose half your retirement. Think about it like that. And Charlie Munger started out much later than Warren, but he was able to compound at a much quicker rate. And I think he was up to like $2 billion by the time he died 2 days ago or 3 days ago. Anyway, this is a memorial video sort of for Charlie Munger. Just talking about some of his life events. I already made a video on Charlie Munger when he was alive. I did make a video about him. But I'm going to remake that video right now, because now that things have updated a little bit, and also Berkshire Hathaway is caught up in a scandal, I would like to talk about the positives of Berkshire's vice president, with Charlie Munger. He was born, I believe he was born in Omaha or California, January 1st, obviously, I think 1924, I don't remember the exact year, or 19, yeah, I think it was 1924. And then he went to the Army. Then he went to law school right after that. In fact, his grandfather and his father both went to law school. He had terrible grades going in, but when he got out, he had the best grade in class, like top 5%. So he's definitely meant to be there. And then, because when you have your grandfather who studies law, and you got your father who studies law, and you are interested in law, or at least somewhat interested in law, then you should probably go for it. And then he got married. He had two Nancys, actually. He married two Nancys. He married one Nancy. He lost everything with that Nancy. She took all the money and everything, all the kids and stuff like that. Got divorced. Married another Nancy, but I think he had some of his kids, or he lost his son. He had a bunch of kids. He fought during World War II. I should probably stop skipping around the timeline, but he didn't fight during World War II exactly. He was just in Alaska during World War II. He was a weatherman, stationed person, whatever, for the Air Corps of the Army. There was no Air Force back then. The Air Force was founded in 1947, I believe. And Charlie Munger joined the precursor of what the Air Force would have been, which is the Army Corps, Army Air Corps. So it wasn't actually a branch in the military, but you can kind of say it is a branch in the military a little bit. That he was part of a branch of the Army, I should say. There's probably basic training for that, the Air Corps. But anyway, that's besides the point. He became a lawyer. He had a bunch of real estate developers that got him interested in investing. It wasn't Warren Buffett. It was actually two real estate investors. One guy said, "Hey, you're working on my case, but it has something to do with real estate." He said, "If you can invest with me and we can make money." He did that, and then he did it again. He made like 400% returns, I think, with those two properties. I could be wrong on that. You could probably misquote me on the numbers there. You could recorrect me on the numbers. But I believe he made 400% based on those 2 clients he had on real estate. And they were like they were dying clients, it looks like. They were probably like 20 to 30 or even 50 years older than him. They were dying, they were getting rid of their empire. They're like, hey, you want to invest with me? I don't really care if you own more equity than I do in the real estate. That's what he did. He had a real estate investment trust, private real estate investment trust. Because I guess a real estate investment trust would be 2 investors investing on property. I could be wrong on what a real estate investment trust is. Put down in the comments if you know what a real estate investment trust is. I don't really know the definition. I'm sure there's a legal thing when 90% of investors are paid taxable dividends or whatever. Like they offset the taxes to the investors and not the CEO or whatever and the management team. I don't know exactly. Because when it comes to REITs, they're so different. Like stock REITs obviously have a legal definition. In order to be legally considered a REIT, you have to have a lot of real estate in your portfolio, and you have to pay 90% of your money to the shareholders, any investment money coming in to these shareholders, because it offsets your taxes, and it actually helps you develop more properties. It's very beneficial. Now that being said, Charlie Munger got started in real estate. He didn't end up doing it. He ended up doing newspapers, surprisingly, media, and and of course Berkshire Hathaway, the insurance industry, because he already knew the law behind it. Warren wasn't as smart as Charlie when it came to laws and stuff. Even when it comes to investing, I feel like Charlie's way smarter than Warren. Warren was better at getting those small cap stocks, buying up the value of the stocks, and the stocks would go at, let's say, the stocks are not making any money. They were like cigarette butts, basically, right? Warren Buffett would buy these cigarette butts. And Warren's still alive today. He's 93. But what Warren would do is Warren would buy these cigarette butt stocks, and they would have one little puff left, basically meaning that the value is actually higher than what the stock's selling for. So like the tractor, for instance, could be like worth $3,000, but the stock would be worth $2,000. You're basically making an extra 25-50% for that little puff. They call it cigarette puff stocks. Now they don't exist anymore. They're only like 0.5% of the stock market. So if you can find them, the little puff stocks, that would be great. But you have to buy up a lot of them in order to control a business. And back in the day, the public stock market was just not as big. You're just never going to get a market like Warren had. Warren was very lucky to be in the time frame he was, because puff stocks were more common and there was less people investing. Nowadays, everyone's looking for those puff stocks. So you basically everything's priced in the market now, because it's so efficient. The capital is actually so efficient because they have so many investors to pick from. Capital's so efficient, there's never going to be those puff stocks, really. They're 0.5% of the market, but it's very hard to evaluate unless you're like a really good accountant. It's very, very hard to evaluate those puff stocks. And even then, I don't even know if it's 0.5%. But Charlie basically said, hey, Warren, this thing's not going to last forever. How about I'd rather buy a good company at a fair price than a bad company at a really, really good price. Because they were bad companies. They weren't making any money. They were just there to sell scrap metal or whatever off them. And there was one business that Warren Buffett really regrets, where everyone lost their job. He's like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. And so people got mad at him for doing that. And, he's like, okay, Charlie, you're right. My reputation is going to be a lot better if I don't sell all these small cap stocks. Because, people are losing their businesses because, the company wasn't making any money. Honestly, you shouldn't deserve to be in business if you're not making any money. But they were some of them were overpaying their employees. Some of them were not. Some of them were getting just scrapped by Warren when he bought them. Not like the profits, meanwhile, but like the business was going to go down anyway. Like the textile business, Warren Buffett bought Berkshire Hathaway. He said it was one of the worst investments he's ever made, although it is the best investment. Percentage-wise, he owns the company. I don't know why he decided to put the textile firm into a holdings company, but that is a whole strange... Insurance and holdings is like their main thing. They own Dairy Queen. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger would go around. They talk to all these CEOs. They say, hey, our board of directors would like us to sell our business to Berkshire. we will sell. It's a private business or a public business. For instance, Dairy Queen's a private business under Berkshire Hathaway. Oh, it's a public business now, but back in the day, it probably wasn't in the public. I might be wrong. It might have been a public stock. Don't quote me on that. It may have actually been a public stock. But if it was a private company, they bought it out and then expanded within Berkshire Hathaway. If it was a public company, they bought up all the Dairy Queen stock, or enough to control the directors to say, hey, we're merged into Berkshire Hathaway, which is very hard to do. I don't know how mergers work exactly. Do you get like some Dairy Queen directors into Berkshire Hathaway? I don't really know how that works. I'm sure there are only 12 directors in Berkshire Hathaway's main table, but there are probably more than that. But they elect the top 12 people, and then of course the chairman and the CEO are the same person. They don't have a separation of powers. I should really just do a business on corporate structure. I read a whole book about corporate structure by John Bogle called The Battle for the Soul of Capitalism. I am fascinated by corporate governance. There are dictatorships and there are democracies, and I would say Warren Buffett's company is probably in the middle, because the CEO and the chairman, there's no separation of powers there, but it's extremely democratic with the way they vote. In that way, they do have the same voting shares, regardless of what investor you are. Whether you have Class A or Class B, you get the same voting shares as long as you have enough money in the business. Meanwhile, Facebook's only selling the non-voting shares, so it's a dictatorship. So anyway, back to my video about Charlie. Charlie is a brilliant, brilliant man. I'm sure he knew everything about corporate governance. He knew everything about laws. A very good lawyer, probably. I'm assuming. He was just the smartest person in the room. Warren Buffett says it's a bad idea for me to be the smartest person in the room. I always want Charlie to be the smartest person in the room. And that was the mindset that everyone had. Warren Buffett's brilliant. He is. He's probably above the average IQ. But Charlie, his IQ is a little bit above, Charlie's way above. Charlie's maybe 5 or 10 or 20 points above Warren. Just the wisdom that he has. He talks about economics in a much more simple way than Warren ever does. The way he just simplifies and makes fun of things. He made fun of cryptocurrency, calls it rat poison. I absolutely laughed at it. I'm starting to understand cryptocurrency a little bit more, but the more I learn about the least I don't really like it that much. But I'm understanding how blockchain technology works with security. It's very interesting. And I don't think it's the number one best solution in the world, but it could work. Again, I am not a guy who knows anything about computers too much, so networking or whatever. But it's supposed to be like a libertarian dream, basically, to have these cryptocurrencies. And Charlie Munger basically said, nope, fiat's the best or whatever, or dollar bills are the best. I don't know if he ever did agree with the gold standard. I know he doesn't like gold as an investment. I know he thinks that gold doesn't produce any profit because it just sits there. You still have that 10 by 10 gold block if you buy all the gold in the world. Meanwhile, the farmlands actually got produced more crops. There is an unlimited ceiling when it comes to economics. That's both what Warren and Charlie have said. Is the ceiling for economic utility is high. It's almost nearly unlimited. Scarcity will always exist. People will always want more than what there is. That's the study of economics, is basically understand there's scarcity of resources. But to know that economics is unlimited, if you let the prices work and they don't go, and you don't let them go berserk, or let prices work, don't steer them, they'll go berserk. That's the line that F.A. Hayek uses. That's the song anyway. He's saying, that's not the real F.A. Hayek, but it was a rapper who based his decisions on that song. And if we let the economy just do itself without the government, maybe minimal, obviously maintaining the property rights of the individual or whatever, that should be the bare minimum. We need to know where your property is. But you have the right to do what you want with that property as long as it doesn't impede on other people's property. If it makes a loud noise, you can actually file a lawsuit about that. The U.S. government allows you to do that kind of stuff. So, if it's in a smell or a noise or even something pollution like in the water, a river, that should be regulated, because that's not just one property that might experience that. That might be multiple properties. In that case, that should be government ran. But at what point, like if you're just polluting your own water, I mean again, you're probably going to pollute someone else's water too. But I'm just assuming that I'm sure Charlie Munger is probably more for government control than him. He actually wanted to ban cryptocurrency. I would say don't ban cryptocurrencies. Have the government maybe tax cryptocurrency, but they already do, so they do regulate in that regard. But also a sin tax on them, maybe a little bit. I'd say take that back. I'm a libertarian. I don't really believe in sin taxes for cryptocurrencies. Only drugs and alcohol, because people make terrible decisions with those. Cryptocurrency, the only bad thing that can happen to you is you lose all your money. Or even if you leverage all your debt, you have to lose your money plus some. If you go bankrupt. But that's the worst thing that happened with cryptocurrency. You go hungry for a few weeks. If you can't find a job and you lose all your money with cryptocurrency. That's really the worst that can happen. Cryptocurrency. With drugs and alcohol, you get DUI, you can kill someone else. With drugs and alcohol. So in my opinion, drugs and alcohol should always be more regulated. I would say, again, with the 15% tax or whatever, they shouldn't be criminalized like they are now. Honestly, people who are selling it, maybe they should go to jail, maybe. But the people ingesting it, absolutely not. They're the victims, aren't they? Their brains are being molded. Anyway, I should not be talking about drugs. I should talk back to Charlie Munger. Oh my God, I keep going off topic. Anyway, Charlie Munger, brilliant man. Absolute brilliant man. Way smarter than anybody gives him credit for, I think, or at least most people. And my brothers are like, oh, I hate him. He's a billionaire, right? If you get your money by voluntary transaction like Charlie has, I don't think Charlie, maybe he did bribe a few politicians or did promote a few politicians, but I don't think he was directly making money from politics. You know what I mean? He's more productive, in my opinion. Lawyers, you could argue, because they're making the money through the public sphere. But he's more, in my opinion, more productive than, because he was able to allocate capital efficiently, than politicians who they allocate capital efficiently, or at least it looks the illusion of capital efficiently, because you say Keynesian economics, they like the illusion of capital, but in actuality they're grasping of resources. So that's what I like about Charlie Munger. He didn't have to bribe politicians. To make his business successful. His business was successful based on, well, first off, the public stock market put more money into his business, and secondly, he was able to make really good deals. A fair price for a good business instead of a great price for a terrible business like Warren was doing. When they met each other, they just immediately okay, we're going to go straight in. We're going to do this. We're going to buy these really great businesses. And he retired, I think, last year or 2 years ago. And once he retired, I knew that he was probably going to go downhill. He was 98 or 97 when he retired from his, not from Berkshire Hathaway, from his newspaper, the Omaha Times or whatever it was, or maybe it was the Washington Times. I don't remember which newspaper it was. It was one of those Western newspapers. When he retired from that, and he stopped managing the portfolio for it, that's when I knew he was probably going to go down. Because when you start losing what gives you meaning, you will start to die. Now, again, he was 97, so I don't blame him for taking a little, 1 or 2 year rest like he did. And I don't know what his last days on Earth were like. I assume he just died of just old age. It was just he was so gangster, but so badass that he just died, just last breath, just kept fighting till his last breath, because we all know Charlie, he probably wouldn't hurt himself. Just an absolute brilliant man. And I wish the world would know, I wish people would look up to Charlie the way that people look up to gangsters or rappers. I said, not gangsters, rappers. People look up to these rappers and they're doing all these drugs. And they're talking about, effing people and, whatever, right? shooting up people, and it's just like, why? Why are we listening to this crappy rap when we could be listening to one of the most brilliant men in all of history, Charlie Munger, or we could be listening to John Edmund talk about his story on how democracy ruined his country. Like, I don't know why people don't have the same philosophy that I do. I'm anti-democracy. I was going to say anti-democrat because it sounds like a political party. Anti-democracy because you look at what John Edmund went through. You look at, and again, Charlie Munger has the same criticisms to the democracy a little bit. I'm anti-authoritarianism, though. I'm a libertarian. I believe that the problem is when people use that word democracy to centralize things. And in my opinion, that is what democracy is. It is the centralization of your own choices being made by a bureaucrat politician that was elected. They took that choice and they put it in the centralized system instead of you. Oh, no, you can't have enough. We don't have enough crackers for everyone, so we got to ration everything. The central authority says, no, your rights don't come from nature. It comes from us. It comes from the government. You should be proud that you live under this government, right? That's something I disagree with entirely with the government. But, I mean, the Constitution lays it, or at least the Declaration of Independence lays it out clearly. But then people quote the Constitution like it does give them rights, which is very fascinating. And Charlie, again, probably has that same sort of philosophy, I would imagine. He doesn't talk that much about, I'm sure he does as a lawyer, actually, with the Constitution. He probably knows the Constitution way more than I do. But the philosophy of this Charlie Munger with his, he calls it the Swiss knife model, where you have to have multiple modes of thinking. You have to be a Swiss Army knife, not just a hammer, when it comes to thinking about the world. And that is this, so many people think so simplistically, oh, this person's not making enough money, they've minimum wage. Okay. Oh, we got to raise minimum wage. Okay, then you're not thinking beyond stage one. What happens when you do that? Oh, you raise prices for everything. Oh, you made the situation not just worse for that one person, but now the small business owners that can't afford to pay the minimum wage, plus the people now have to pay for goods, more expensive goods. Like everybody has to pay for more expensive goods. If you were to just gotten rid of the minimum wage, there would be no minimums on the prices on the goods. The goods would be cheaper, in my opinion. You got rid of the minimum wage, and not only that, you have more employees for the small businesses and even the big businesses. But I care more about the small businesses because I would rather have a private business than a public business. I believe the public hierarchy is slow and bureaucratic. I believe private little hierarchies, like little families, are more efficient. You look at the Amish, they have a very efficient family-oriented hierarchy. You look at the stock market with the VT and VOO, their stocks only go up, go 9% a year, which is fine, or 7%, I should say, not 9%. 7% if you count inflation or whatever, maybe even 5%, I don't even know. It's probably lower and lower every single year. Slightly lower and lower every single year. I'm sure Charlie knows some of that. I don't know if he ever thought about it like that, but that's what I think anyway. But Charlie Munger, may you rest in peace, my friend. My wisdom, I've gained so much wisdom from your book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. I will probably do a review on that book, just in honor of Charlie Munger. I will try to do a review on that book. It's been months, or I think like 2 months since I've read the last chapter I've read from that book. And there are like 14 chapters in that book. It's 4 chapters, but then each chapter is separated into different sections, so it's a little complicated the way the structure of the book is. And it's just so big of a book. It's kind of just a massive book. I wish it would have been smaller. I wish he would have broke up the book into multiple things, because the book doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. As is one big book, I think it would make more sense as smaller books. But it's just a lot of wisdom in that book, despite the fact that book's so big. And the words are big. Like, they're massive words, and they've got pictures on every single page. Even the Soviet Constitution on one of the pages. It's amazing. Charlie Munger just has a love for history, a love for knowledge that goes beyond most people's comprehension, even my comprehension. I love all these videos are my knowledge, and I don't even think I come close to the knowledge that Charlie Munger knows with some of his stuff. So maybe I'm wrong. I probably know more about languages than Charlie does. I study languages a little bit more, but yeah, the whole thing is just fascinating. The whole fact that he's gone, his wisdom will live on, though. Like, if he was alive today, I want to see another Ponzi scheme, and I just want him to talk about it, you know? But, you know, honestly, just go back to his past interviews and see what he talks about the Enron scandal, or even cryptocurrency. He was right on that, you know? It's just fascinating to me that he was right on so much, but people just never look at him. They don't even some people say they absolutely hate him for saying some of this stuff he does. I'd love to hear his opinion on things because he's so direct. He doesn't talk like Warren. Warren talks like a politician. Charlie talks like a very direct person, and he doesn't need to be. Indirect like Warren. Warren has to be tactile because he's elected as president. But Charlie being vice president, he doesn't have as much to do with the company. So he was able to speak his mind more freely. And I love that about Charlie. He is somebody so honest that very few people today are honest. I'm not even honest. I lie about everything. I lie about everything you can think of, I lie about. And the fact that Charlie is like an honest person. Like, he speaks like people used to speak like people used to. And we're missing that. And that's something I absolutely hate about American culture. That Charlie embodies the past American culture that I want. Just the honesty of him. You know? I may have not agreed with him politically on some things, but the honesty of him is what I want. I want the honesty of Charlie Munger in the American public. Especially with our government, which now violates the Fourth Amendment like no end, and nobody even talks about it. I am the only person that ever talks about the fact that the government violates the Fourth Amendment multiple times throughout the day. Every single time they pass a bill, every time they have an agency spy on me or anybody else. In fact, I always know that the agency is spying on me. I don't care anymore. Okay, go ahead, Frank, spy on me. FBI, hello there. But, you know, that's neither here or there. I live in a very wealthy country. Maybe it's because of them I am wealthier. You know, maybe you can argue that. We've never had a system where we didn't have the FBI and CIA watching over us for the last couple decades. I wonder what happened if you would get rid of them. Would you still live in a system that would promote your own wealth? I don't know. And that's politically what I would disagree with Charlie. I think Charlie does like the FBI and CIA a little bit more. Again, he was a military man. He probably likes the establishment more than I do. I'm a libertarian. I would like to weaken the establishment, not destroy it entirely, but weaken the powers of every single branch. The only president that's ever done that is Grover Cleveland, and he's a Democratic president. I like Grover Cleveland. I think he's the only president that I like that he actually did what I wanted him to do. He's still not that good of a president, maybe in terms of modern days, but you know, he had two non-concise terms, like 22nd and the 24th, I think. But I would say I'm a Grover Cleveland fan, and then my second favorite president. I don't know if Charlie Munger has favorite presidents, but we're gonna go talk about my favorite presidents for just a little bit. Would be what's his name? Silent Cow. What's his name? Calvin Coolidge. Silent Cow. My second favorite president, hands down. Way better than Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was not a small government guy. Calvin Coolidge tried to weaken the government, but Congress would just not let him. So in my opinion, because Congress was big government, it didn't allow him to do what he wanted. If Congress would have allowed him to do what he wanted, although he did create the tax for people dying. So I'm pretty sure Charlie Munger's thing got taxed. His estate got taxed. So he did create the state tax. He got rid of the ideal of private property rights for families, which I absolutely disagree with. It's one of the more, it was like a 40% tax. In that case, he was not a small government guy, Calvin Coolidge. That's the one thing I'd probably disagree with him on. Immigration, his immigration policy kind of sucked a little bit too. He favored northern immigrants, like people with light hair like me, over people with dark skin. But that, Calvin Coolidge said he even disagreed with it. He said it was a little bit biased. So I can't really say it was passed through Congress and he signed it into law, not really thinking much of it, and he rarely vetoed things. He never really made the presidency bigger than it needed to be. He just sort of did nothing. He just, he sort of was just there. That's why they call him Silent Cow. But he's my second favorite president by far. I would say George Washington. I don't like the way he handled the troops that much. I understand they were in a war, and so things were tense, so he just did what he needed to. But he shot people for doing mutiny when they weren't getting paid enough. That to me, no. They should have every right to unionize in the military, but they don't, because you give away your freedom when you go into the military. That's the deal you sign, actually, on the waiver. And the first person to do that was, of course, George Washington. Shot people who did mutiny. They were going to take over the government if they didn't get paid enough. And in my opinion, I think you should at least try to get some money from the government, although maybe I'm wrong. Maybe George Washington was right to mutiny. Not to kill them, but I would say to get rid of them into the get them away from society, to arrest them permanently and put them in jail for 10 years. That would have been better, I think. I hated the way he dealt with that. That's why I think he's probably my third favorite president, George Washington. And he owned slaves. There's a few points off for him. Did he make this country? Absolutely. With his ideals? Absolutely. He's amazing with that. He was a good founding father compared to other people. He tried. He really did. But yes, rest in peace, Charlie Munger. I don't know why I was ranting about presidents for a little bit. Charlie Munger, this brilliant man. You really need to read his stuff. You really need to listen to his voice. Anybody can benefit. Over watching the stupid rappers and their stupid music videos, go and listen to Charlie Munger. You'll actually get something from life if you listen to his stuff over these rappers. Sir, does he have a bias? A historical bias? Yes, he does. Do these rappers have a historical bias on the gang life? Yeah, they do. They have a different type of history, but you're going to learn a more precise history, I think, Charlie Munger, over a more biased history with these gangster rappers or whatever. Anyway, that's besides the point. You're someone, I am someone else, talking about Charlie Munger. Goodbye.